Welcome to Forum 360. I'm Mark Welfley. Thank you for joining us for our global outlook with a local view. Have you ever been in your basement or garage or at an estate sale and come across a one-of-a-kind item sure to make you rich? Or did you just discover a cheap knick-knack that's just gathering dust? Today, we will venture into the world of antiques and offer advice and thoughts and direction for those who are antique beginners like me. My guest today is Dustin Pizzino, an antique expert and owner of Miscellaneous Barn in Paynesville, Ohio. So welcome, Dustin.
Thank you for having me.
Start, if you would, by just sharing a little bit about your background and how you came to become an antique lover and dealer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in between jobs and I actually worked for Miscellaneous Barn prior to purchasing it. I was 25 years old, and you know, it's funny being asked this question now versus when I was younger. I didn't realize how prepped and everything I was to be in this industry. You know, I used to, my grandfather, we'd always jump in the car on the weekends and go out and we'd pick up some antiques. I used to always buy the pedal cars and do all that, and then I'd be at auctions with my aunt. So it was, it's one of those things that I didn't realize antiques were really a passion of mine. So when the opportunity came and the business came available, I stepped forward, bought the business, and it's been 18 years now, and it's been a fun ride. It really has.
So the market in Northeast Ohio for antiques, does it have a distinct personality, or is the Northeast Ohio market for antiques and collectibles similar to other regions and states in the country?
Well, every state is different. You find trends in different areas, obviously like West Coast, California. You know, the trends tend to set there first and then slowly move their way back into other cities, maybe Chicago or New York, and really when you're getting into upstate New York, things like that, that's when the antiques they tend to hold more value because the demand is there. Mm-hmm. There's older homes and things like that in that area, and people that are wanting to decorate their home with period pieces.
Does it make sense then, if you found an antique here in Northeast Ohio, to drive to a bazaar, an antique sale in New York, and sell it? I mean, is that the kind of difference you're talking about?
There is outlets here in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio, that could fetch the value of an antique, but you really have to do your homework as to how they're selling the item. Obviously, you'd want it to be maybe an online auction where their audience is a broader audience, whether it's national or global. A good friend of mine actually owns Premier Auction Galleries in Chesterland, and he's found being online and selling, he's actually getting the true values of the antiques within, Northeast Ohio. He's selling them, but we're shipping them to Seattle or New York or, Canada, Russia, there's Australia. So you really want to do your homework when you go to sell your antique items, and don't, if they tell you, hey, we're not interested, there's a reason. It's probably, maybe it's not the valued piece that you thought or you might have found online.
So the burning question for me is, how can you tell the difference between the genuine article and a fake?
Well, even professionals are fooled every day. The new techniques, there's items coming out of, China or even Mexico, and it's really looking at the cut. If you're looking at, let's say furniture, for instance, the furniture items, you're going to open up the drawers and look and see, pull it out and see how it's cut. It could look perfect, it looks great, but if it looks like it was machined out of a really nice saw blade and everything fits perfect in unison, the reality is we didn't have those tools back in the 1800s, so the items are not going to look they're actually going to be a little off. Everything's not going to be pristine. Or like the old toy banks. Everybody loved the old toy banks, and everybody go in there and keep their money in there. Well, some of them, they're cast iron, and if it had a Phillips head screw on it, we didn't have the Phillips head screw, back early 1900s, things like that. They were using the flathead screw. So there's little, if you're ever looking for something, we have the internet, and it's a great source to narrow down some of those items. So if you had the bank, you type it in there and always look, differences between knockoffs, and then take a look at your item and see if any of those are similar to what they're considering online.
I see. So you go out to the internet and do some research of your
Yeah,
own.
that's the best way to knock off a few, because the average antique dealer, they're not going to have the time to sit there and go through your particular item, and we do have those resources online that will give you an idea, at least a general knowledge of what your item would look like if it was per se fake or real.
Okay, that's interesting. So when, at any point in time during the day, someone from outside, from the community, can walk in and put something like in the middle of your counter, and it could be glass, it could be candles, it could be 100 different things. Can you look at something, and you personally, and you know all those different categories and know kind of how to figure out whether it's genuine or not?
Yeah, that's
amazing.
I always hesitate. I never want to get a customer too excited, because then if I tell them it's fake after feeling as if it is a real, true antique, I say that it has potential. Okay. And again, even experts that are on particular items, and we do such a vast collection of items. So I like to look at it, and I'll do a little more research. Again, I'll even reference the internet or different things, or call other experts and look at it. And sometimes the name's on it. If it's like, say it's an old Waterford piece, or like Fenton glass has in a little bit of a distinct. So the newer Fenton glass, and it's kind of like little sharp edges and bubbly. So people that would know it understand what I'm saying, but they're kind of sharp and pointy would be the older ones, and they're a little more round. Like the castings are different, even though it looks like the identical item. One will have some age and the other one is newer. So again, that's just years of going to auctions, referencing items that maybe I have purchased or customers have brought in. But to give a specific, it's very difficult. It's highly produced, looked after. Artwork is like, it is mind-blowing. The amount of copies or, one-offs that have been reproduced. It's definitely a lot of homework involved in the item. And I often tell people this isn't really worth, because even if you do find that is the antique piece, it's still worth $100. Like, you don't have a $100,000 item, and I'll give that to them, and I say I'd have interest in buying it, and I'd push it back on them to see if, they want to make that decision or not.
Sure. Once you know an item is valuable and not a fake, how do you determine its true value in dollars?
Well, that's a difficult question, because every region, everywhere, let's say before eBay, items would be 3 times as much, but now it's so readily available and able to be shipped. So I reference a lot of closed auctions and other listings throughout the country. There's a few websites that I'm a member of that I'll go on and see, okay, this has been selling here, here, and here. And I'll kind of get an idea of what our value and resale would be here in Northeast Ohio. Okay,
I get that. As far as antiques in demand or collectibles, right now, what's hot?
Well, I don't like to call them antiques.
Okay.
But the hot thing right now is all mid-century items. You get into the antiques, maybe like cast iron pieces, more decorative, smalls. But the true thing right now that I'm finding in Northeast Ohio is more of a mid-century collectible market. The whole, Knoll furniture, things like that. More of like a Frank Lloyd Wright look. that tends to be the trend here in Northeast Ohio. They're mixing it into cottages and different homes, and really that's more of what the trend is here in Northeast Ohio.
That's interesting. Do market conditions affect the business of collectibles and antiques?
It can. As a store owner, definitely. The market trends will change. As far as their value, I think that they still have a market value in the right location. But again, being said, like, if you take a mid-century piece here that might be worth $100 to $500, you take it to Chicago, it's maybe $1,000 to $2,000. But again, it's supply demand in each city.
As far as common mistakes that beginners might make, share one or two of them.
Yeah, the mistakes are, so again, just as I said, reference the internet and go on. There's a lot of people that are using certain websites to reference items. You go up, take a picture of it, and it pops up. It tells you what it is, and it gives some general values or what people might be asking for the item. And it's so far off of what a realistic value in Northeast Ohio could be. I use some of the same sites, but I still have to reference and see what's the value here in North. Because you'll be at say you go to a garage sale and you use your camera and you take that photo and it pops up and it's worth $100, and you bring it to me and I'm like, they were asking $100. The last one sold for $20. There's a difference on it because the internet's only searching through images. They're not looking at real data as to what has sold or has not sold. So I've had people that, I bought this at auction and here it's worth $100. What will you give me for it? And I'm like, I don't really want it, or I'll give you $20, and they've spent, a lot of money trying to, per se, make money and or just collect a good quality piece for their home.
So being too exuberant about a find and perhaps overpaying for it?
Yes.
Before you turn around and try to resell it?
Yeah, I see that all the time. Well, even if you're not looking to sell, maybe you really truly love the item, but you wanted to confirm that that's what it is. And again, going back to the fakes of something that's been reproduced at one point. You might have that reproduction item and the one that you found online, because it looks identical, you can't see the screws in the bottom of it, you can't see its build quality, or the blue in the paint or red in the paint could be two different colors that's giving it a different era, and that's where you have to be very cautious with getting into the business at the first and recognizing fakes versus a real true antique.
If you're just joining us, thank you for listening and watching. My name is Mark Welfley. This is Forum 360, and we are talking about antiques today. And I'm here with Dustin Pizzino from the Miscellaneous Barn in Painesville, Ohio. And we're going to continue our conversation today with the feast or famine question. We see storage wars and these other programs where you buy a locker or a storage location, and you open it up, and you hope you'll find the one thing that's worth $300,000, and you paid $300 for the locker. Is the business in general a feast or famine type business? Find a big score and it keeps you going for a while, or is it more of a kind of a daily drip? It
truly can be. If you're just wanting to run a small shop or maybe do this out of your home and not have other residual income coming in, I don't suggest that you quit your day job and start to dabble in the antiques and consider that as a full-time income. Because there is times, we've had some finds over the years, but they're few and far between. And really, the difference with Miscellaneous Barn, the reason it's actually been around since the early 1980s, so it's about 45 years old, and we've seen a lot of our competitors come and go over the years because of the changes and that whole, they get, the feast is good, but then the famine comes, or you like during in 2008 when we had our housing crash, and there's markets change and people aren't buying anything for a little while. You really have to be diversified, and if you're doing something very specific, say you were doing mid-century when I got into the business, I couldn't give it away. Now I can't keep it in stock, and you're looking at, I've only owned the business now for 18 years, so that's not a very large window of time that the market for antiques and or collectibles have changed.
Share with me your biggest score.
The biggest score?
Yeah.
So I happened to buy at estate sale a umbrella stand filled with canes and everything, and I going through them, and I'm like, these are great. I was very excited for the purchase, and one of them, it was awkward. It looked like a ball on the top of it, and it had little white circles all the way around and scribed, and it looked like African or some kind of art piece. But I'm like, this is an awkward cane to be in with all the other ones. And I look in the bottom, and it's scribed on the bottom. So we're really trying to figure out exactly what this is, because if it was a cane, right, it would be worn on the bottom, and there wouldn't be any kind of inscription. Go to find out, it was a 19th century Fijian war club from the islands of Fiji. And what the white that was around the side was actually at one time, and it still was, but it was whale's tooth that they would drill out and put in there so it was sharp. And the description on the side was for grip, but you would be able to tell which tribe it would come from by how they actually scribed and did the grip on the stick. So it was actually a war, like Fijian war club, to fight off animals or intruders or anything like that. I had it checked out by Sotheby's in New York City. They loved to have it for one of their upcoming auctions, and they appraised it at $16,000. I bought the whole umbrella stand filled with canes for $200. So I was ecstatic, and this is earlier in my career, so I was like, this is great, this is like my big hit, and it ended up bringing over double what their appraised value was. So I was very ecstatic to have that opportunity to go out to Sotheby's, see their operation, and so far to date, that is my single most score as far as value purchased. It was great. It was interesting, and it was, again, it just, the whole subject matter was great, and the experience was really good.
I'd imagine there's a great deal of interest in the learning of what happened. It's a transactional business for sure. You're buying and selling antiques and stuff, but also learning all the history of things. Is
well, and to think that they were even. At that, let's see, I can't remember the exact age now. It's been some time. I think it was maybe 150 years old. And to think 150 years from now, we weren't really that barbaric here, but they were still on an island. So their culture was totally different in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So they would still have those items. Here we had guns and everything, and we didn't need that, So it was kind of a history learning experience as well.
Where do you find your antiques, or where would you suggest beginners go to find
so
their
for us,
collectibles and such?
It's we work with a lot of realtors, probate attorneys, things like that. We over the years we built a name for ourselves, so people are coming to us. I don't really have to search anymore. But to get into antiquing, I suggest auctions, estate sales. Really, in my opinion, if you're going to go dig or looking for antiques, if you go into any stores or other donation places, a majority of that's already been picked over, right? So to find something unique and rare and at a great price, you'd want to go to, per se, an auction or estate sale, some garage sales. Not that I want to drive all around for a garage sale, but a better estate sales. And there's search engines online that you could find that are doing certain area auctions and estate sales. And down in Amish country, there's a few auction halls down there that they come across some great antique pieces.
Okay. Take me through a day in your life. Like what happens in the morning? And
First is coffee.
Okay.
That's the first step is coffee. It really depends on the day. Mostly, like throughout the earlier days of the week, I'm out looking at estates. I come out, I take a look around the home, take notes, photos, things of that nature. If it happens to be a pickup day, my guys and I are out, acquiring everything, packaging, bringing it back to the store, and sorting, and getting everything priced and displayed out on the floor. Perhaps back out again to look at estate. I mean, in one day I've looked at 10 estates. I mean, it was never ending. And then, or auctions, when I had a little more energy, I'd go out, pick out an estate in the morning. We'd work our store from 11 to 6. And then after that, I'd be going to certain auctions across Northeast Ohio and buying as much as I can.
I want to ask you about restoration. If an item is old, like maybe it's a piece of leather and it's reconditioned so that it's vital again, does that add or does that subtract from the value of an item? So
it's really on how it's restored, and if it's in really bad condition, or if it's inlaid or things like that, you could get somebody to properly restore that piece and add its value. But you want to make sure that you're using period type stuff. You want to be using, don't put some pine in there and color into, mahogany and try to get it to look like it's right. Make sure you're putting the proper repair to the item in order to keep its value.
So no Phillips head screws then?
Yes, no Phillips
in
screws.
In the bottom of those tanks.
I mean, I have guys that are old square nails. They'll actually cut in a restoration place will either have some old primitive nails, or they will kind of custom make and almost blacksmith, if you will, the correct pieces or design to go into that antique.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been in a situation where you go to an estate sale and you look at something you really like and you buy it or the collection of items and you see that's really going to sell and you bring it back to your store and it sits? Like, what goes through your mind?
We laugh. My employees and I laugh about this all the time. I'll come back and I'm like, this is really good. This is going to sell, And we have a whole truckload of items. And I just laugh because I'm like, it's the ugliest thing that sells first. And I'm like, I didn't even think anybody would want that, So even being in the business and seeing it on a day-to-day operation, I'm still confused as to which items. And sometimes the better items, they sit around for a little while. But it's typically it's because I have to find somebody that's looking for, perhaps they're doing a period home restoration or things like that. Antiques, they have their final home. And it's really not everyone wants to spend antique value for a dresser to go into a newer home. They might want to scale it down and put just something newer in there.
Off the air, you were mentioning that there's been a resurgence in thrift shopping, and specifically that younger people are getting into thrifting, and that I think you said was carrying over into antiques. Do you find that is true, that the antiquing is no longer kind of the province of like the older adult? There's a lot of young people coming in? Yeah, I'm starting to see, and you have to keep in mind too, the younger generation that's coming in, they're finding things that are what we'll call vintage, right? So they think it's old because it's from maybe the 80s or 70s, and it's cool to them because they remember in their parents' house or maybe their grandparents' house. So again, that's where the antiquing world is really like they're starting to use the terms thrifting or vintage, but they are finding interest, and I do see a lot of them coming out, and it's. So if you have that antique shop or whatever, you really need to diversify and have something from all eras in order to keep the traffic and everybody coming in and have interest. Because they'll come in, like a 1980s coat that's just wild and loud,
they'll fall in love with it, or maybe like records are starting to come back, the vinyl is starting to become big again, and they're buying the old antique audio equipment. They're finding like from the 70s and 60s, that's starting to come back and be trendy. So yeah, trying to get just to like antiques that are maybe 100, 200, 300 years old. They appreciate it. I don't find a lot of the younger generation purchasing it, but it comes to the vinyl and other things that, again, from the 70s, 80s, maybe mid-century, that's kind of the trend now.
Yeah, interesting. Great conversation. I wish we had more time. The desire to find, preserve, and appreciate old and valuable items never seems to get old. Interestingly, U.S. Customs defines an antique as anything that is 100 years old or older. Now, no matter the definition, whether you are a seasoned collector or antique beginner, a great find or the search for the next great find has renewed the spirit of collecting and antiquing for centuries. There seems to be no end in sight. I would like to thank Dustin Pizzino from the Miscellaneous Barn for the visit today, and ask each of you to keep your eyes and minds and ears wide open until next time on Forum 360.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.